Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Foxworth Theory. And I am your host, Eugenia Foxworth. And thank you for joining us today. This show is about entertainment, business, fashion, and the arts. We're going to be talking with movers and shakers from all over the world, allowing them to tell their stories right here on the Foxworth Theory. Throughout the decades, the music and recording industries have gone through many changes that have had a tremendous effect on the artists who create works. One of those changes has been in relation to record label contracts. Decades ago, an artist was presented an agreement pertaining to making music for the sale of records, CDs, and tapes. With technological changes that brought us online digital downloads and streaming, which relies on a higher volume of consumption for a few cents per song, record labels have shifted their agreements to what are called ancillary rights contracts, better known as the 360 deal. These agreements rely on other factors besides the sales of streams, downloads, and maybe vinyl recordings. Labels now want percentages of an artist's concert, sales, merchandising, and endorsement deals, and what profits that come from this. Does this really work in favor of the artist? Or are these deals set up by the record labels reflect the saying from the gambling world that the house always wins? Our guest today is here to answer these questions and many more. A native New Yorker, music industry attorney, Kendall Minter, has worked in various law firms, had a solo practice as the law firm of Kendall A. Minter, and a boutique law firm, Minter and Gay. He moved to Atlanta, working with various firms, and established Minter and Associates, LLC. Kendall is co-founder and inaugural executive director of the Black Entertainment and Sports Lawyers Association and serves on their advisory board. He is chairman emeritus of the Rhythm and Blues Foundation and a member of the board of directors of Sound Exchange. Minter also serves as a board member and general counsel for the Living Legends Foundation, an organization dedicated to recognizing those members of the entertainment industry whose efforts and contributions have paved the way for many in the entertainment industry, especially minorities and women. Many of those opportunities are in the areas of recorded music, radio broadcasting, and retail. He is the author of Understanding and Negotiating 360 Ancillary Rights Deals, an artist's guide to negotiating 360 record deals, and launched a website, askmusiclawyer.com, that provides information in all areas of entertainment. Kendall Minter, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ms. Foxworth. It's a pleasure to spend some time with you and your audience.
Now, where were you born and raised? What university did you attend?
So I am proudly a native New Yorker, born and raised in Queens, New York. Lived there pretty much all of my life until I went north to Ithaca, New York, upstate New York, to attend school where I went to Cornell University as undergrad. Loved the area, so I stayed there for law school and went to Cornell Law, where I graduated and then moved down to Washington, D.C. After a couple of years working with Fairchild Industries there, I returned back to home turf in New York, joined the Park Avenue firm of Burns Jackson Miller Summit and Jacoby. And then fast forward to 26 years ago, I left New York and moved south to where I am right now in Hotlanta.
And it is hot there, and a lot of the entertainers are there now. Perfect place.
Yes, it is.
I'm so sorry. Why did you find it necessary to author a book regarding the 360 move over? What is the 360 deal?
So the 360 deal is a way of life now in the music industry. It's evolved over the past 10 to 15 years, which is when it was first initiated, initially in England at EMI, and then it kind of morphed into the American contracts. But for all intents and purposes, the concept of the 360 is record companies were beginning to lose revenue. They were beginning to lose revenue because of the advent and the evolution of technology, as you mentioned in the opening remarks, where vinyl and CDs, the old-fashioned physical product for which they were having a nice return, was being supplemented and then later on eclipsed by electronic sales. So first that electronic sales went to digital downloads, and then the digital downloads turned into even less financial return on digital streaming. So as a result, the record companies were looking for opportunities to bridge some of the gap of the lost revenue that they realized as technology shifted from physical to electronic and digital. So they decided, since they were making significant, usually six-figure, sometimes seven-figure investments in the development of artists' careers, that they should share in all of the various ancillary areas that artists make money in the music and the entertainment space, spurred on and encouraged and catapulted in part because of the investment made initially by the record company in putting their music out, marketing it, promoting it, and creating a brand. There was a historic arrangement many, many years ago when 50 Cent was signed to Interscope and he did his vitamin water deal. And he walked away literally with tens of millions of dollars from selling his shares in that venture. And Universal Interscope didn't share in it at all. And they were like, hold up a minute, we helped create this brand. Now we don't get to eat from it. So that just kind of continued to morph, and in the corporate boardrooms at the major labels, they decided that we need to be able to be passive participants in these additional revenue streams that our artists are realizing based on our risk investment. So voila, the ancillary passive income 360 deal, which basically says that a record company will receive a negotiated percentage of income made by an artist in what we call the non-music, recorded music areas, such as live engagements, touring, merchandising, television appearances, motion picture appearances, literary and book deals, endorsements, and sponsorships. And those percentages are subject to negotiation, a lot of negotiation actually as to when they'll kick in, what the percentages are, how long they last, et cetera. And very little was really understood. I mean, everybody knew how to say 360, but most creatives didn't really understand the nuances of what that really meant, except now they were making less money because they had to pay somebody else above and beyond their lawyer, their manager, and their talent agent. So just like you have with the airline industry, which is, I think, a great analogy, once baggage fees and not late, but airline reservation change fees were implemented, they're still around. It's hard to get them out the room once they're in the room. And the same thing with the 360 deal. So you will pretty much know that all new artists, most mid-level and emerging artists that are signing to major and larger independent record companies and music distributors will have these clauses in the first draft of their contract. How it ultimately winds up at the end is a matter of negotiation skills. And that's why I crafted and put out the book, because there was really no other source of information that was reliable, that was current on the marketplace that brought some information, some elucidations, some education to this specific area. And I had a video, still do, that's on YouTube under 360 Music Deals. And I realized that it was the most viewed video on the internet that discussed this topic. So I just got the idea to put it into a literary book form and make it available so people can kind of get into the weeds, which we didn't do on that short interview that I did that was on YouTube, because that only lasted 10 or 12 minutes. And that's how the book came about. And that's what the 360 deals look like.
Okay. So what are the pitfalls of the 360 deals? And can you provide info as to which artists have signed such a deal?
So the pitfalls all depend on who you're working with. So for the labels, there are no pitfalls. It's a win-win because it's an additional ancillary area of income and revenue, which they now have an entitlement to receive based on those contract clauses, which prior to that or without that, they would not get. So it's more revenue brought into the music distributors and record labels. So they had no pitfalls. The pitfall might be from an artist's perspective, because now you have to chop up the dollar even more. So let's say, for example, with a traditional 360 clause, an artist will be paying their manager 15 to 20% of whatever money they are making from a live engagement. They will also be paying their talent agent typically 10% for booking that gig. So that could be 30% out the door right there. Now you have to add in a payment to the record label for that same gig. Depending on how that deal is negotiated, it could be anywhere from a low of 7.5% to maybe as much as 15%, shouldn't be more, but typically it's in the 7.5 to 12.5% range. So put that on top of the 30%, that means it's almost 45% going out the door, sometimes on gross revenue, before the artist gets a chance to pay their bills from the show, pay their band, pay their road crew, possibly pay the accommodations, the travel to get there, and then net out whatever they're going to get for themselves. So that's why it's an additional concern for artists, especially with live engagements. You have less of a concern when it doesn't have an obligation that also comes with it a lot of expenses, like a book deal, a film role, a TV role, because then the artist is just showing up, or they're doing one set and then they're being paid for a period of time, but they don't have to fly in a band, they don't have to fly in their road crew, they don't have to worry about hotels and airlines and all the other costs that go into doing a live show. So that's why the artist is impacted most significantly. And unfortunately, it's the price of doing business these days. And a savvy artist with a good representation, either by way of manager and or lawyer, will let their team go to work on trying to minimize the financial impact against the artist with these clauses, because they will be there.
So therefore, I had asked that part two of the question was, can you mention any names of a couple of the artists that may have signed the 360 deal?
No, I can't because of attorney-client confidences. So that
okay, that's fine. That's what I thought. I said, he's going all the way around the corner, back again. Okay, yeah. I was just in San Diego, and they took over a street for one of the organizations I belong to. And I have never seen so many people and so much equipment out there. That must have cost a fortune. It was Keith Urban, and it was free to us. So the corporation that did it. And I was like, oh my God. But anyway, back to you. Was the 360 deal designed for the marginalized communities where many hip hop, R&B, and rap artists originate?
No, it wasn't. It's 100% economically motivated. So race, gender, ethnicity, nationality have nothing to do in the concept of 360, no more so than a traditional royalty clause or rights clause in the record contract.
That's what I was thinking, but I wanted to check,
Sure.
Getting ready to become an attorney myself. No.
Come on through. Got plenty of room. Welcome you.
No, not really. I'd be tarred and feathered. Back in the 1950s and 60s, there were record executives who were also acting as personal managers for the acts signed to their labels. How different is that from the 360 deal?
So it's very different because some people call it 360, which everybody understands because it's a wraparound.
Mm-hmm.
Some call it, and in contract parlance, you may see ancillary rights, which is why I also put that phrase in my book title. But it's also called passive income right. And the reason it has that word passive is because the record company is not trying to get involved in managing or booking the talent. Their participation is 100% passive. They have to do nothing extra other than what they're already doing in recording and putting out music in order to be entitled to get this percentage based on the contract clause. And it's very different because with record companies these days, they're usually large organizations, unless it's a mom and pop independent. You have scores, if not hundreds of thousands of employees. So it's a veritable machine that takes a lot to move, and then it has an impact in the marketplace because of their clout and their resources. So they don't try to get involved in the artist management field, which is a very different environment, very different kind of business, and very different industry than it was back in the 50s and 60s. So we've evolved far and away from that. Now, you may still see that kind of a dual relationship only when you have an artist signed to what I call an owner-operated independent record company. And they also want to control everything with the artist's career, so they'll manage them as well. But that's only in those kinds of situations where you'll see the dual role. And then it's up to the artist attorneys that are negotiating their deal to make sure there's no what we call double dipping, which means that if the artist is going to be signed to an independent label and managed by the person who owns that independent label, then there won't be any management commissions that the manager will take on the money that their record company is giving the artist, because then they're wearing both pockets in the pants, and they're taking from one pocket, taking from another pocket, and just double dipping the artist. So that double dipping is excluded in any well-negotiated contract.
Okay, so what are the advantages and the pitfalls of the 360? I mean, you've given us a lot of the pitfalls.
Well,
what are the advantages?
Again, it depends on which perspective you're looking at.
I know.
From the label, the advantage is they now have more revenue to put to their operations, and hopefully in a trickle-down manner, be able to even more fully support the marketing and promotion for the particular artist that they are now receiving revenue from the 360 stream. From the artist standpoint, there really isn't any defined, definitive, definite advantage which you can measure, unless the contract is set up so that the label has to do certain things in order to be entitled to that. And that's not usually the case.
Boy, this is really something. I do not want to be an attorney, so you can keep your job. But
it's a lot of fun, and it has its ups and downs like most other professions. But fortunately, which is what keeps me motivated and focused, is the ups are more numerous than the downs.
Yes. So can a recording artist really benefit from such an agreement? And if so, how? Depending on...
Well, it's hard, because I would say in terms of measurable benefits, it's hard to measure the benefits, because the payment to the record company or the distributor of that percentage is not tied to any additional level of services to be received. and that's why it's called passive. And to the extent that you're an established artist or a successful artist that's in high demand, then you can have more leverage, which is what it comes down to, and either not have that clause at all in your recording agreement, or you've negotiated to a certain extent that its financial impact will be very significantly minimalized. But that's on an artist by artist basis.
So you answered my next question. So I was asking you what leverage can an artist bring to the table, but you answered it. I mean,
yeah.
Right now, being an artist, now I understand what happened with Prince and a few others before technology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's about
mm-hmm.
leverage, same as in professional sports. And you go from a 6-figure contract to an 8 or 9-figure contract just based on the leverage that you have from your performance on the court or on the field.
Mm-hmm. So when did the 360 deals start becoming the norm in the recording industry?
I would say about a dozen years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Does this type of agreement only exist for the major record labels, Sony, Universal, Warner, whatever, or do indie labels use the 360 as well?
Everybody uses a 360. Because if you're a smart indie, you don't want to be any less smart or any less financially rewarded than a major label for the same kind of services that you're giving. So you will see the 360 clause in independent contracts the same as you will in the major label deals.
Okay, thank you. Now let's take a short break and we'll be back with our guest, Kendall Minter, in just a moment. Thank you for joining us on the Foxworth Theory. Be sure to tune in on Thursday at 9 p.m. on the Foxworth Theory Network.